Hi, I'm Teresa Powell, and I'm here with Todd Novosel with NFM Lending. I have to ask Todd a few questions because a lot of buyers today, they have questions regarding the NAR settlement and how it impacts commissions. All right, Todd, so the first question, with the recent NAR changes, how are the appraisals treating commission structures, and are they handling them any different in the valuations?
Yeah, so as of right now, business as usual is a really good term that we can use when it comes to the NRA settlement.
Okay.
Not seeing a lot of changes as it relates to valuations of homes. Not seeing anything come in lower from a purchase price perspective. Really, honestly, it's been business as usual.
That's what I like to hear. A
Yeah.
lot of buyers have that question. So
Yeah.
anytime we do a buyer consultation meeting and we're going over all the changes, we always, try to answer all the buyers' questions. And that's one of the top ones that they have is, are sellers still paying the commissions? Are they seeing that in the contracts? And I know I'm seeing it. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, so we actually just reviewed all of our closings in the Central Ohio area since the settlement came out. And what we found was 94% of all contracts that came in, the buyer's commission was being paid for by the sellers.
Okay.
So 94%, business as usual.
Mm-hmm.
4% of that, we noticed that the buyer's agent was taking 0.5 to 1% reduction in commission on that transaction. And then the last 2%, the buyer themselves was paying 0.5% of the agent's commission.
Okay.
So pretty good numbers, as it relates to that settlement coming out and everybody being concerned that they were going to have to pay the full 3%. And right now, statistically, that's just not the case.
Yeah, I mean, as a buyer, you definitely want to have agent representation because the listing agent, they represent that seller's interest, and you definitely want to have an advocate to help you through the transaction, contract negotiations, and the whole home buying process because it's quite extensive.
Yeah.
Now, what should buyers and sellers know about the way the commission is being handled right now in the transactions?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is that now every agent that is engaged in the process has to have a signed buyer's agreement with that buyer. So a buyer cannot go and see a house without having a signed buyer's agreement. Obviously, that signed buyer's agreement has the buyer paying the realtor's commission of 3%. Which again in our area, that's standardly being paid for by the sellers, but it is something that is negotiated now.
Yeah, and that's really tough for buyers to understand right now is they can't see a house without signing a buyer representation agreement with an agent. And I always put a clause in there that we will do our best to write in that the seller is to pay the buyer's agent's commission, or will request closing cost that the buyer then can reallocate for the buyer's agent commission so that they can have representation. Buyers need representation. So it's up to us to try to figure out a good strategy to make sure that they can afford that.
Correct, yep.
So the next question I have is, are the recent commission changes, are they affecting buyer-seller negotiations in any noticeable ways?
On my side of things, no, I'm not seeing anything different. I think the difference is that as we look at contracts, we have to be a little bit more detailed on that review, that it's just not a boilerplate contract anymore. We do have to make sure that, the fees are being allocated the way that they used to be, and if there are changes, that those are identified so that it can be properly disclosed to the consumer.
Yeah, there's so many changes now with the NAR settlement so that, as a listing agent, when I'm in that role, a lot of my sellers, they still want to contribute towards the buyer's agent closing cost, because they know that buyers do want representation and they feel like it may slow down the traffic if they don't offer that commission, and which is fair. I mean, they have a choice. It's their choice. It always has been.
Correct.
But, we want to make sure that we have the seller's authority to disclose that to buyer's agents before they preview a property, if only a buyer wants to see properties where it's offering a commission for their agent.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. The traffic on homes where a seller's not wanting to pay the commissions is definitely going to be down because agents are obviously going to be discussing that with their buyers, and if the buyer says, I don't have the money to do it, they're just going to pass on that house. So I think from a strategic and a marketing standpoint, sellers agents, I think, are pushing, you want to pay the buyer's commission because we're going to attract more people. Attracting more people on that listing means there's going to be potentially multiple offers, which now drives up that value. So I think from the seller side, it's definitely something you want to do.
Yeah, and as a seller too, when they go to buy, they're going to be requesting, that their agent commission is covered by the home that they're going to purchase. And I've noticed a lot of new construction, builders are also offering to cover the buyer agent commission. So it's changed, but it kind of hasn't. It's a lot more difficult, to understand, but we're here to provide you with all the answers and the questions that you have, just to make it a more smooth transition for our buyers.
Yep.
Stay tuned for more mortgage tips, and please feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions.